Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Playful Lens. This episode is a little bit different. Gillian and I answer some of the questions that you've submitted. So, if you have ever wondered about how to differentiate when is it play and when is it learning, if you've wondered about how play impacts teacher well-being, if you've ever wondered about how you might introduce play into a school culture, maybe where it's non-existent, or if you are a little bit curious about what happens when you as the teacher move to a more playful position, the impact that has on classroom management, control or structure in the classroom, then I think you're going to find this episode really insightful. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please let us know what you think and I hope you enjoy. Hello, Gillian.
Hello, Helena.
How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I am good, thanks.
We are virtual this evening, aren't we?
We are virtual this evening to get through some of these questions that we got.
Yes. It's lovely to hear from other teachers, isn't it? And asking them how we can support them on their play journey.
Yeah, it really is, because as we said, we wanted this podcast to be a sustained support, because it can feel quite lonely if you're the only teacher in your school who's thinking about introducing play, or you've started to introduce play. So I suppose this is where we get to provide a sustained support.
I agree. And I think creating a space as well where, teachers know that they have somewhere to go and maybe somebody to ask. And if we don't have the answers, maybe some of our guests will have the answers. So it's lovely to hear from other teachers as well, and to hear other lovely stories of success about play in classrooms as well. So It's great that teachers have this space.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm going to ask you the first question that we got, if you're happy to go ahead with that.
Yep, far away.
Yeah. So this is right up your street, Helena. So the first question that I'm going to ask you is, how does play and playfulness enhance a teacher's well-being and their creativity, not just student outcomes?
Wow, yeah, this is right up my street. All right, Gillian. The first thing, I suppose, I'm going to refer back to what Tina from Teacher Adult said in her podcast, and she said, people often say to me, "How do you do it? How do you teach all these children and have them so engaged?" And she said, "It's play. Play is how we do it." And I suppose we're so busy as teachers, and to hear Jacqueline Fallon say that when play happens in our classrooms, there's a relaxed atmosphere. Like, we need that. And as a teacher, we get a break from being the ones who are driving the teaching and the learning. Now the children are driving it. So I think that change of role takes a lot of pressure off us. And I think that helps. That helps me relax a lot. I suppose the other thing to remember is that play it's how we heal. Play is,
Mhm.
and as teachers, very often maybe we have lost touch with that playfulness. So when we get to play with children, we get to connect with it, and we get to reconnect with that part of us that loves learning and creating, and it's joyful and reminds us that we're human beings, not human doings. It gives our nervous system space to breathe, and it gives us a chance, I suppose, to stretch our imaginations, because what Laurie Desautel says is that we use our imaginations against us so often. We imagine the fear and the anxiety, and we big up situations instead of using our imaginations to support us. And when we engage in play, Gillian, when our nervous system moves to that play state, that creative state, we cannot be in a threat state, be in fight or flight or fawn mode. Our nervous system toggles between states. So the more time that we lean into being creative and being playful, the better it is for our overall health. And I suppose ultimately, I feel like play is joy disguised as pedagogy, and we need that now more than we've ever needed it. So I could go on and on and on in how it supports our well-being, but I'm going to leave it there.
But what a wonderful place to start. Even what you said there about being in a play state versus being in a fight or flight state. I mean, that is something that we could just absolutely take into our classrooms. And I think that is, for me, what you said there about that is eye-opening, that you can't be in both states. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and we've often we lose touch with our creativity, and I believed that Oh, I'm not creative because I'm not good at art. I'd learned that somewhere
Yes.
in
Yeah.
school, that
Yeah.
creativity equals art. But no, we're
Yeah.
all uniquely creative. So whether that is academically creative or you love solving problems, or maybe it is art, or maybe it is imagining and just sitting there daydreaming about stuff and imagining stories or doing role play. And I suppose on a personal level, last year I had my children are a bit older now, and I was kind of thinking, right, I'm always banging on about play being so good for our health or all domains of our well being. And said, what can I do for me? What kind of play can I do for me? And I thought back to, well, when I was young, what did I enjoy doing? I loved it was role play. I loved pretending I was on television. So I put the big girl pants on and I joined the local drama group. And
Amazing.
yeah, and it took me a while now to build up the courage to do that. But I have to say, I get such a buzz from it. Like I came home and my husband was like, geez, your energy is totally different because I was
Yeah.
so excited.
Yeah.
It was joyful. And I didn't even get a part. It was auditioning for something, but I didn't care. I got such a buzz about being up on stage and taking on the role of a character. And then I went for other auditions later on and I got the part. And you know the way Jacqueline Fallon talks about hard fun, something is
Yes.
hard, we stick with it because we love it. Learning the lines for the play we're putting on at the moment is the Playboy of the Western World. And learning those lines, it's really, really hard. The language is very different to how
Yeah.
we speak now. But I do it and I stick with it because of the joy from
Yeah.
performing. And that's what's so good for our nervous system. So I think watching children at play, even if I don't love playing with the Lego or playing with the blocks, because personally I don't, that doesn't bring me a whole lot of joy. But I can appreciate it when I see the children who engage in it. If I was in a classroom, I would be the one who's over at the scripts or playing charades because that's the type of play that I love. So for our well being, yes, tapping into our own play and our creativity, and we're with the experts when we're with the children in our classrooms.
Yes.
So I think that's my long my long-winded answer to say it has a lot of benefits for our own
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah. So it's not just for children in the classroom at all.
No, it isn't. It really
No.
isn't. Gillian, I have a question for you. Why do you think that play is sometimes seen as separate from learning in schools?
I could give a very long answer on this too, but I will try and keep it as short as I can. I think very often it is because there is not that physical, tangible result. So I don't have a completed worksheet. I don't have, or we spoke about this before we started recording. Okay, I've done the play, but now I have to get the worksheet done as well. So I'm just doubling up on the work. The play is the work. I am such a believer in allowing the children to explore the materials. I I always say it's our classroom. So whatever's in the classroom is yours to use. So by allowing children to know where the materials are and to know that they can go and get them, to know that maybe you have a maths area with things that will help you when we're doing maths. So today might need to go and get the counting stick. Tomorrow I might need to go and get blocks, but that they know that those resources are there and that that can really help with their accessing the materials. So allowing them to explore number through concrete materials rather than on a worksheet is going to help with their retention. I think that teachers are afraid of it being viewed as not being done if the workbook's not done, of a colleague coming in and saying, sure, you haven't got the workbook done, like you don't have the learning done, or the principal saying it, or the inspector saying it, or the parent saying it. Sure, did you see that she didn't even do the workbook? What did they do in there at all?
Yeah.
I think we've all heard of those scenarios. And I think that by having the worksheet book done, that means I've done the work. However, if you talk to the children and your assessment of learning, if you talk to the children and say, tell me about whatever it is, if they can tell you about it, then the learning has happened. Whether they've done it on a worksheet or whether they've done it playfully, if they can explain what has happened. However, when you do something in an active way, when you do something in a playful way, the retention is so much better. They start to tap into different skills. They're doing, problem solving, they're doing social skills, they've got that collaboration, they've got their own well-being because they have success at it as well. If you have the child who can't do the worksheet, well, then they are not successful and they don't feel successful, and that translates then during the day. So there are so many different things, but I think for me, the fact that there's not a physical, tangible result that I can say, this is what I did and this is how we did it. Whereas I think you have to be able to say, right, we're going to learn about this. Like I did my days in sixth class. We used to do the 1916 Easter Rising, and I'm a huge fan of thematic learning. I think it makes things so much more meaningful for children. And one of the things that we did was, obviously there's explicit teaching going on. So I taught them what happened during the 1916 Easter Rising. And then as we closed our topic, I asked them to create still images of the 1916 Easter Rising. I could have asked them to write it in their copy. By doing it as still images, they had to show me that they understood what had happened. They had to show me that they had researched it, that they had listened, that they knew. They can't show me a still image of a football game because that's not what happened. So by me looking at these still images, I can say, okay, Gillian got that, Helena got that, so and so got that. Yeah, they all have it. Great. Or they don't have it. And that's my assessment of and for learning. I need to revisit this topic. I didn't have a physical worksheet completed. I had no writing in the copy about that. But if you speak to those children, they know exactly what happened on each day of the Easter Rising because we had covered it in so many different ways. We had done projects, we had read books, we had listened to things, we had done playful activities, we had done the still images. So I don't have a physical workbook completed, but the learning's absolutely done. And I think that's where maybe there's kind of a misunderstanding that if the worksheet is not done, the work's not done. Um, but I think, like, if you look at any child of any age and they are using blocks, they are doing balance. The higher the tower gets, the more likely it is to fall over. And how do I fix that? So I extend my base and then I go up. You don't get that from a worksheet. So that is the work. The play is the learning, and it's what extends it on. So if you have a child building a tower, so my 2-year-old will always start with one block and build them up and up and up, and it falls over. He is going to learn that I need to put 2 blocks on the bottom, but that play has extended his learning and his knowledge. And now I can build my tower higher. And as he gets a little bit older, he's going to say, well, now I can make this into a bridge. And how do I make it into a bridge? How do I connect it to this tower? It is the play that drives on that learning. He's not looking at a workbook and saying, okay, I need to fill in this answer and then that'll tell me how to do this bit. So the play is the learning. And for me, and it doesn't matter what age the children in your class are, active, hands-on learning in a playful way is the work. And what I always say to people who are nervous about not having the worksheets and the workbooks done, my answer is talk to the children. That's how you know the learning's done.
Well, you've said so many interesting things there, Gillian. I want to zoom in on. So, first one is this mindset that we have, which makes sense because I was just thinking for us as teachers, because we teach like we've been taught. So,
Yes.
works equals learning. The more paperwork you have done and the more copybooks that are full at the end of the year, well, good teacher. That's, I suppose, traditionally what we grew up with. But what you've listed out there, the skills involved in all of that, just what you said about the 1916 Rising and how they had to make still images, you are assessing so many more skills there.
Yeah.
And if I'm just doing a comprehension, which is technically what it is, if I'm just
Yeah.
answering questions on a page or doing a literacy activity like that. And of course, there's a place for them, but for history, it needs to, the active, playful approach that you've taken there. I would say there's a lot more skills involved. It's more enjoyable for the pupils, and it's actually easier for us as teachers because when you get the groans and the And they just don't want to do it. They're so unmotivated, and it's like pulling teeth. And we're just kind of like, "Well, you got to do this." Like, that's we need to shift that away, that I would be excited about engaging in
Yeah.
that kind of learning.
And I also think that that becomes your classroom management. Not that play is like, you can do this if you behave. I don't mean like that at all. But just to what you said there, that, if I said to them, right, open your history book there, page whatever, answer those questions, or write me out a paragraph, write me out a page. And that's when the messing starts. That's when the paper starts being flicked. When we're engaged in something, you don't want to start messing because you're enjoying it, you're engaged in it, you're motivated. So when we're creating those still images, and for sixth class, sometimes they can be nervous doing it, they can feel silly doing it, but they do it, and you don't really have the groaning and moaning. So it is your classroom management. Like I say, that's not that we have play when you're good. I don't mean it like that at all. But I mean, as in, you have more behavior challenges when they're doing something they're not interested in doing and they're not motivated in doing. But by doing those still images and having that bit of fun and bringing that playfulness into a history lesson, they, you don't have the behavior issues. And the retention is better. They remember things when they're active. They may remember bits of it when they've written it out in the copy, but they really remember. I remember that. Oh my gosh, I know what happened on Easter Monday because I remember doing a still image of it in sixth class. They remember it. So the learning is far more beneficial.
That's why Dr. Jacqueline Fallon calls it a game changer.
Yeah,
It's
a game changer.
It is a game changer, and it's sometimes I wonder, is it just fear that we can't let go of this idea that learning has to be on a piece of paper?
Yeah. And I agree. And you said something there as well about being a good teacher. Are we viewed on how good of a teacher we are based on how much of the workbook is done? I think that is definitely a conception that's out there and a definite fear that we have as well. Well, I won't be seen as being a good teacher if I don't get the workbook done.
Yeah,
And, not to bash any companies or anything, but they have marketing departments for a reason. And
they're
we are
busy.
led to believe, they are businesses. And I'm not bashing any company at all, but we are led to believe that to teach effectively, I need these programs. You absolutely don't. We teach the curriculum and, we don't have to teach to a book.
Love it.
So, Helena, another question that came in from a teacher was asking, how do you bring play into your school? How do you incorporate it into your school if it's not part of the school culture?
Yeah, really relevant question. Suppose from my own experience in my own school, bringing it into the younger classes was easy because I had a
Hmm.
principal who was very progressive and Ashton was about at the time. So when I went for the training, it was best practice. So she was happy to run with that. And I think that's why we're so well established in the younger classes. Bringing it into the senior classes was, Jacqueline Fallon says it takes courage. And I really feel like when I look back now, I'm like, God, I was very brave to do that.
Hmm.
I was training as a child and adolescent psychotherapist and a play therapist at the time with the Children's Therapy Centre. And I was learning about all these benefits of play and how important it was, for all of us. And I remember feeling like I need to facilitate play with these children. I need to let them play. And I was very uncertain about it, but I was also like, I can't ignore all the evidence that there's there about the benefits of it. So, the first thing I'd say is it does take courage. So you're going to feel, and courage is a bit different to brave, because brave is when we feel like we can do this and we're taking a big step. But courage is when you feel a bit wobbly and you're going to do it anyway. So it takes courage to do this. I would say because it's so clear cut in our curriculum now that is child play is part of our curriculum right up to sixth class. That's there. So we know that it's not just something nice we can do, it's a requirement because it's in our curriculum. And the other thing, I suppose, is to start with asking the children, because it's very much the environment is co-constructed.
Hmm.
We are asking the children, well, what would you like to play with if we had playtime? And as you said in a previous episode, it's borrowing resources from the younger children. It's our own, it's really, we have a huge amount of influence on this as teachers. So if I believe you're too old for Play Doh, they're going to think, oh, we're too old for
100%.
Play Doh. And it took me a while to get comfortable with that. When I introduced play, it was probably more the board games and the stuff that I felt was like, okay, that's linking up to curriculum outcomes in some way or other. So let's bring in those. And it took me a while then to evolve. So I would say that's a good place to start. Start with something that you're comfortable
Yes.
with. And then it's a conversation with the children then to say, right, well, what would you like to play with? I noticed you weren't very interested in junk art. So what else could we do or what could we include in the junk art? So I would say by doing that, we are implementing a play pedagogy. We are drawing on the key competencies of be well, be creative, being an active learner, and we're giving our students choice and voice. So we're doing a lot by having the courage to say, right, we're going to start introducing play. And I would say, like, be really kind to yourself. If you're a teacher who's in a school where this doesn't happen and you feel like, no, I need to start introducing this, be really kind and be really patient with yourself, because the first time, because very often it's so sad that the children themselves believe, but we're too old to play. Why would you
Mm.
play? That's for the younger classes. So be very anchored in your own beliefs that no, this is important. And it's in the curriculum. So that's further support. After that, then it's take it step by step and be prepared for play sessions where you feel like, oh, that was a bit chaotic. I wouldn't do that again, or play sessions where you feel like, God, they didn't really engage with that very well. That's all part of the process. That's all learning.
And
That's
it's
all.
the same with every subject. You know, you're
Yeah.
going to have a maths lesson, a Gaeilge lesson, or something that
Yes.
didn't go the way you thought it might go, and you go, I'm not doing that again, or I'll change
Yeah.
this. So it's the same with the play sessions.
Yeah. It does. And it can bring conflict because play brings big feelings, but actually, that's really healthy. That's normal. You're bringing some of the issues to the surface, which is much healthier. Then you can deal with them than if they're kind of happening below the surface. Um, so just it's learning. You're both learning, and we have permission to do this. And having our professional conversations with an inspector or a principal to be able to say, "Well, I'm figuring this out," and that's okay. That's okay because this is new. And I would say get support, get help. Like, we're here to support any teacher at all who's trying to figure it out. Always send us a DM. And when I introduced it in fifth and sixth, I had to use a rota because they had completely lost touch with play. So we went back to year on construction. I introduced messy play, but that's very personal. I know I've some teachers who are like, I wouldn't touch that, but they loved it in fifth and
Yeah, they
sixth.
do.
Sensory, and it's so regulating, and it's great because they can do all the cleanup. So it's actually
Yeah.
easy to facilitate up in the senior classes. So we had a rota, we had a junk art area, we had an art area where there was the watercolours, stuff in the art press that was rarely used because there wouldn't be enough for a whole class. There was charcoal, oil pastels, paper, all that stuff, balls of clay. And then as I got more comfortable with it and they got more comfortable with it, the rota was gone and we started introducing things like Play-Doh, but I had to constantly reassure myself, this is okay. This is part of the curriculum. Because as you said earlier, we are so hardwired. We are so trained to, where is the product? Where is the learning? How can I prove that you've learned this? But I'm going to draw on what you said earlier, Gillian, which is it's the conversations with the children. That's where you see the learning. And when you see the engagement, the passion, the creativity, or maybe just the relaxed calm, and as they're chatting to a friend, painting a picture, like that's it. Then you know you're doing it right. If they're engaged, they're learning.
Absolutely, I agree. And just to bring back something that you said there, that it is in the curriculum. You know, you are making a good professional decision if you decide to bring this in because it is in the curriculum. And just another thing to note then, that it's actually the right of the child. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child state that every child under the age of 18 has the right to play. So, you know, we have to uphold their rights as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Gillian. I have another question for you here. Are you
Okay,
ready? Okay.
I sure am.
So, what would you say to teachers who think that being playful means losing control or losing structure in their classrooms?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Being playful is how you are. I just think, you know, it's how you are in the classroom. I love the children in my class to know that I'm a person and that this is what I like. And I have two little boys and a husband, and I talk about my family. And obviously, I share things to a level, but that they see me as a person and that I make mistakes as well and that I love sparkle. And, that playful side of you is just so great to bring into the classroom. And so I have to quote my favorite quote, Dr. Joanna Fortune, who was on our podcast a couple of episodes ago, and she's just amazing. And she says that play is not a box of toys, play is a state of mind and a way of being. And it's so true. And I always say that you can have the most expensive resources, but do nothing with them. Or you could have no resources and a playful attitude, and it changes everything. So the difference between play, playful learning, and playfulness is play is what we do, playfulness is how we are, and playful learning is how we teach. So by bringing that playfulness into the classroom, it means being open, being curious, allowing yourself to make a mistake and that it's okay to make a mistake, that the children know it's okay to make a mistake. Being playful in the classroom is bringing in those questions, the I wonder questions, as Dr. Joanna Fortune said, I wonder what happens if, I wonder what happens when. And it's allowing children to see that you're asking questions, that you're curious, and that you can model that for them. Be playful with them, do the movement break with them. I used to do the guided dances with my sixth class. And at the start, it was like when your dad dances at a wedding and they were all mortified. Teacher, will you stop? But then they loved it and you're having a bit of fun. We need movement as much as they do to regulate during the day. So they see that. And by bringing in that playfulness into teaching, into learning, it creates a totally different atmosphere. And it allows them to see it's okay to be playful, particularly as you said that the older children sometimes disconnect with that and that they can see this is a bit of fun. Let's have a bit of fun. When I did the Three Little Pigs with them in sixth class and they kind of go, really? Three Little Pigs? I'm going, yeah. Mucky needs help. Come on, let's give him a hand. And they just got involved and and then they were talking about mucking all year. And I was going, who's mucking? And they're like, the Three Little Pig teacher. And I was like, oh, yeah, sorry, forgot about that. The letter you didn't write us? And I was like, oh, yeah. But, bring that bit of fun. That builds relationships. That builds connection. That allows them to see you as human. You don't lose control in the classroom. You don't lose structure in the classroom when you bring that playfulness. And again, like what I said in my previous answer, I think sometimes it comes down to fear that if I go in and I'm having the crack with the kids, and if I go in and I'm having a laugh with them, they're all going to take advantage of me. They don't, because when you're playful, you build that connection with them. And I have had many incidents in sixth class where I've had to deal with behavior issues. But when you have that relationship and you have to deal with something, they know as soon as I walk back into that classroom, it's a fresh start. She's not holding this against me. She's not, and I don't feel I lost control now because so and so acted the maggot or such and such a thing happened. I feel, okay, somebody's struggling with something, something's gone wrong, somebody's annoyed somebody. I even found having those tricky conversations with a child, it's easier because we have that relationship. So I can say, Helena, what's going on? What happened? Do you want to tell me what happened? And, how can we fix this? How can we move forward? You know what the expectations are in the classroom. But because I have that playfulness and because I can have the crack with them, they can have that conversation with me. It can be difficult at times, but it doesn't mean losing control. And the minute we walk back into the classroom, the relationship is fine. And also that freedom in the classroom to move if you need to go
Yeah.
and get resources if you need to. It's not unstructured. Just a very little story that happened this morning, actually. And I chatted to my colleague, the SNA who works in our classroom, who's just amazing. And I'm a big fan of a soft start. So for any age, I always do a soft start. I don't know what children are coming to. I don't know who's tired, who didn't sleep, who has a headache. So I always like a soft start. So for my junior infants, I have the activities. They can go and take what they want. They can do the different things. So this morning, there was colouring, there was blocks, there was Play-Doh, whatever they had taken out and they were playing with. And I actually said to Trish in the classroom, I said, look at this. I said, there are so many people who don't agree with what I'm doing and probably going, would she ever get on with the teaching and learning? It's whatever time it is now and their age is doing this. There's nothing, it's a waste of time here. And she said to me, she was like, Jill, this is amazing. Like the work that was going on that I was not asking for. They were counting, they were talking. As you say, there was conflict at times and they had to sort it out. They were working things out, they were reasoning, they were writing letters that I had literally only introduced the other day. They were drawing spiders' webs because we had done them at Halloween. And they were drawing pictures of their families. They were talking to each other. It's Beacon Alta week in our school, so we're working on being kind. They were drawing pictures of each other being kind or doing different things, all unprompted and all done through play. And I looked around the classroom and I said, first of all, this is assessment for me because I can look at them and say, they're getting that, they're understanding this, whatever's going on. And it's also, how can I take this a step further? What are they doing in connection with the learning? So, what
Hmm.
are their interests? So, they're making letters out of blocks and they're making letters out of Play Doh and they're building a tower together. How can I, use their interests? And I stood back and I watched them and I just thought, this is magnificent. And it's not a waste of time. And it was so calm in the classroom, even though there were 22 children, 5 year olds walking around, changing from station to station. And it was just so calm and so lovely. And there was more structure in that than there would be in trying to keep them all sitting, listening, and engaged in, me talking at the whiteboard or something. Sorry,
And
that was a
that's
very long winded answer, but
You've hit on so many important things there, Gillian, and I love how you described the soft start for your pupils, and I love that it's a soft start for you as a teacher as well.
and that goes back to your question about the teacher well-being as well. That I
Yeah,
don't come in rushing and racing either, that we come in, we always sing our good morning song first. I teach junior infants, so we sing our good morning song first, and then it's a soft start, but it's a soft start for me, as you say, which
yeah.
enhances teacher well-being.
100%. And then you also mentioned like they were all going about their own business and they knew what they were doing and they were engaged in it and it was different. We are born to thrive and we forget that very often as teachers. We don't need to mold development. Development will unfold naturally when the environment is right. And we all have our own little interests and when the resources are there and there's the grown up who can pay us attention and notice it and witness it, we thrive. And it sounds like that's what you facilitated in your classroom. And that's why I feel so strongly about pushing play because our curriculum is changing and I feel like we're drowning in it. Or, the amount of jobs and vacant posts that are there and the INTO numbers of 80 to 90% of teachers that burn out.
Hmm.
I feel like it's because we're trying to do too much. We're cramming learning into children that are not ready to learn, they're
Hmm.
not engaged, and that's exhausting on us. Whereas your classroom sounded like it was just a hive of activity and actually
It
amazing.
was. Helena, like, I actually, the two of us stood back and we watched what was going on. There was maths going on in one section. There was like letter formation going on in another one. There were kids reading books and they were looking. Actually, they were trying to find the letter A that we had started this week. I had not asked them to do that. I hadn't, but they had been engaged in different things. There was, social conversations going on about families and kindness and SPHE values. Like you could nearly name all the subjects that they were engaged in totally unprompted. And it was actually only this morning. And actually, Trish said to me, she said, there's a podcast episode for you, Jill. But it
Yeah.
was just so lovely that we both stood back. Now, I think I'm confident in what I'm doing. But to come back to the question that was asked about how do you bring that in, like there are other teachers who might go, I really want to do that, but I'm afraid of the principal walking in and going, what is going on in here? Like it's 9:10. What are you at? Or that they're afraid of what people will say. I can stand over what I'm doing. And I know now, again, I have a supportive principal. So that does help if this is part of our culture in school. But if she walked in and said, Miss Corbelly, what's going on here? I can say exactly what's going on here. And I would include that in my plans. I do include in my reflection that the children are engaged in X, Y, and Z, and I can see that because. So I know that takes confidence. And I'm sure there are teachers going, I couldn't do that in my school. But I think start small. Even just include a soft start for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. It's just such a lovely. And I did it with sixth class. I would have activities that they could do, some free play with no direct instructions. I would have them out. But I also had things on the board like riddles or dingbats or complete the picture or, different things that they could engage in. They knew they could go and take a book if they wanted to. They could go to the art press. And I just think that that's so beneficial for everybody, for
Yeah.
everybody. And it's a lovely way to start the day. We have so much to do, as you say. And it is very tempting to come in, right, get out the books, come on, start doing that, do this thing. We have to, come on, we have to get on with this, come on. It's very tempting. However, through my experience, by doing a soft start, it actually affects the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And it makes the rest of the day easier. It makes the engagement better. You know, if you have a child who's coming from a bad night's sleep, who is anxious because there was traffic and they're late, it's raining, whatever it is, you have a child coming from whatever it is, or a teacher coming in with a bad night's sleep, or a teacher who has a headache, or a teacher who forgot their coffee at home. That's me sometimes. Do you know that it just gives everybody a breather? And then
It
the
hon
rest of the day runs more smoothly, I always feel.
it honors our humanness, and I feel we've this pressure. Where is this pressure coming? They are not doing their leaving cert in the morning or
Yeah,
next week. They're not going to be doing
yeah,
their leaving certs for a
yeah,
long, long time, and we have this pressure to because they can only learn so much. They can only
yeah,
take so much in a day. That
yeah,
I'm curious about, are we putting it on ourselves? Are we imagining it as our perspective, or do we perceive that parents are putting this pressure on us
yeah,
because or is it from social media? Are we seeing what's happening in other classrooms and we're setting standards for ourselves? Because one of the things my supervisor talks about a lot is there's ideal and then there's reality. And
yeah,
yes, in
absolutely.
the ideal world, we'll all come in ready to learn and we'll have, what is it, 40 minutes, an hour of maths. Boom, we'll move on to our literacy. Boom, we'll move on to our Gaelga. That's not reality.
Yeah.
Reality is we're human. We're coming in, as you said, in different states.
Yeah.
And that,
And I think as well, if you look at the workplace, like I know there are quite a number of staff in our school who come in and go up to the staff room and have a cuppa and they have a chat, and that's their soft start. And I guarantee you, you know, I bet my husband doesn't go into the office and just straight to the computer and turn it on. I bet he walks past his colleagues and, well, how are you? How was, oh, did you see the football last? We all have kind of some form of a soft start, you
yes.
know, and it could be that you have a commute and you're listening to a fantastic podcast called The Playful Lens. You know, but you could be listening to your favorite music. You could be listening to something. I think we all, in some way, have a soft start. So I think, why not give that to children too? You know,
Yeah, it's a win-win.
it's a win-win. Yeah.
Okay. So, Gillian, we have other questions, but I'm conscious of time. So I think we should leave it there for today. And if there are any listeners, teachers, parents, SNAs, principals, any school staff, if you ever need support or advice, you know where we are. Please send us a DM, or our email address is available as well. You'll see it in the notes for this show. Please reach out because we believe in this. We know how important it is and we want to support everyone on this journey.
So thank you for listening. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. It was a little bit different, and we hoped that you enjoyed listening to us answering your questions. We will be back with another guest in our next episode. And if you liked this episode, don't forget to share it everywhere, share it with all your friends and colleagues, and like and rate our podcast, as it helps other people to find us, and keep it playful.